Hello there, I'm another Magento Dev. Thanks for joining me on this Friday afternoon live stream, as has become the way. So today we're doing something, if you're a regular viewer and you come from a Magento content, we are going to be doing something slightly different, but as I say, as I always say, as a sort of, my nature is Magento Dev, so all of this is from the perspective of a Magento developer, as well as being an introduction to beginners who are looking at JavaScript and JavaScript frameworks, SaaS platforms, backends. What basically, we're we're app, web, software engineers, whatever you want to call us. I'm putting content out there that I find interesting, that I hope you're going to find interesting. So what we're going to look at today is getting started. Not just getting started. It's not going to be one of them corny, this is how you get started and this is a to-do list. I'm gonna really look at the process of getting going with Supabase and Nuxt as a front end. So Supabase is your back end and Nuxt is your front end. And looking at some of the sort of the intricacies, the stuff, the idiosyncrasies of using those two platforms together that I've worked with for a while now, and I obviously watch YouTube tutorials just like you guys, and I've not found this level of detail that I'm going to try and go into today. So we're going to talk about how to set it up, which is a dead quick thing. We're just going to get that out of the way because obviously it's important, and if you've never done it before, it's good to have someone talk through that. So I'm going to do that. That won't take long. We're gonna look in quite a lot of detail at the authentication of Supabase, because that's a massive part of getting started, and it does tie in to the database in and of itself as a back end. So, and it ties into it in ways that I didn't always expect, or the results of which I didn't always expect. Some of it is pretty good. I know it's quite cryptic, but we'll get onto it. And then setting up databases, linking everything up. From a Nuxt perspective, or from a front end perspective, I am going to talk about the difference, because I'm going to do this in Nuxt 3, which essentially is Vue 3. I'm going to talk about the differences between Nuxt 2 and Nuxt 3. I'm not going to talk about how to migrate or anything like that. I'm just going to highlight the differences. And I think that'll be useful, particularly if you're used to building things out in Nuxt 2 and Vue 2, and then you're not quite sure, or you might have had a stab at Vue 3 and Nuxt 3. Obviously, I keep saying Vue, but this is predominantly going to be Nuxt, but it is transferable. And just giving you my perspective on what I think is the sort of analogously what the changes are, what the new thing is versus the old thing, what the new thing is and what it was in the old thing. So there's like, it doesn't just look like a complete change and they've thrown something away. In most cases they've just changed stuff, so we're gonna talk about that as well. And then we're going to touch on as well something that I found brilliant, to be fair, and it's the state management for Nuxt 3, which is I'm using. I don't know whether they've got rid of Vuex, but I think it's not in the docs anywhere to say that. Basically, it don't come with it anymore. It don't come sort of built into it, so you can just add a Nuxtjs. You'd have to install it yourself. We're going to be talking about Pinia, which is a state management tool which you have to install into your project, but once you do, I found it really easy to work with, easier than Vuex. And as always, we'll sprinkle on a little bit of Tailwind, because we all love a bit of Tailwind, don't we? So as I say, thanks for joining us, everyone. And we will. I'll try and bring up the comments actually, just in case anyone wants to say anything, because as always, it's an interactive thing. And right, we'll get started. So really simply, like, what is Supabase? Well, Supabase was invented, I think, it's an open source version of Firebase, and Firebase was Google's SaaS platform. So Google's authentication, document storage, real-time databases, all kinds of just general storage, like asset storage, and obviously serverless functions. And basically it was a backend for apps, and that's what this is. But it's fully open source, it's free up to an insane amount, like insane, and it's just a joy to work with. And the best thing that I think the tagline of it is brilliant, which I think is building a weekend, scale to millions, something like that. And it actually is like what it does, what it says on the tin in terms of it does come through with this type of stuff. Couple of things to note though on the free plan, and I don't know whether if it's just the free plan and then you don't get these issues on the live plan, is you do get outages now and again, and a few little sort of things that you think are bugs, and then it turns out that the service has gone down in the back end. So it's just to be aware. Very, very rarely happens. It generally happens when you've showing a client something, doesn't it? But it does. It is pretty solid. But just to sort of highlight that it is free, so expect you to have to accept that things may not be quite what you get from a paid service, but the paid service is $25 a month, which is brilliant. And the docs are really good. So what we're going to need to start off with, well, in terms of for Supabase, we're going to need the JavaScript docs up. So down here on the left hand side, these are all the JavaScript docs, and this is everything you need. But there is a really interesting and a really brilliant feature of Supabase is as you build out your tables, so as you build out your authentication, your tables, your entries, it actually creates your own API docs. So this is a project that I've started just conceptually, and I've added a few tables, but it builds its own API docs, so it actually gives you the keys to your own. So I've got a table called jobs, and it's giving you the keys to open up and access the data within your actual application. So these docs are obviously very, very, very useful, and you could flesh these out, and these could be exposed, and you could let other people connect to your app, couldn't you? Because Supabase has a traditional API, what you'll be able to obviously connect to using traditional API connectivity tools like Axios or Postman, for example. But it also has a brilliant SDK. So we're going to get onto that. So the first thing we're going to do, and just so I can sort of do something while I'm talking about it, is we're going to throw up the front end of our project, because that's the thing that comes first. So we're going to install Nuxt. We're going to install Nuxt 3. So I have done and talked about installing Nuxt 2 before, and now we're moving on to Nuxt 3. So I need to find my sites directory, and then once I'm in my sites directory, I'm going to install Nuxt into here, and I'm going to install it into a project. And I'm just going to show you, these are the installation instructions for Nuxt. So it's a one-liner. It's easy, right? So npx nuxi init, and then we'll go through the installation process. And I'm going to show you a few little I hate saying tips and tricks, but a few little experiences of mine. What to sort of look out for during this process, and how to sort of set yourself up for success. Fucking hell. I'm coming out of all the best ones today. So we're going to go with npx nuxi, and then init, and then we're going to call it fucking hell Nuxt app. Oh yeah, we'll call it Nuxt app. That's a good. I bet I've got a Nuxt app. We're going to call it Nuxt 3 app, because I bet I haven't got one of them. Right, so Nuxt 3 app. So this is going to install Nuxt into this directory. So I need to install Nuxi in order to install it. So do I want to proceed? Yeah, I do. And then it's just going to be a command line install as it's done there, and that's it. Basically, we're done. And now what we're going to do is we're going to either open the project, or we're going to install it. I say not what we're going to do, but what we can do. We can either open the project in VS Code, it's saying there, or we can go ahead and install it here. So I'm going to go ahead and install it in here. So we're going to CD into the project. So we're going to CD into Nuxt 3 app, and then we're going to install it. So we're running yarn in here, and we're just going to install the all the packages. So this is running through the basic install of Nuxt 3, and we're going to let that run through. So it's installed Nuxt 3.3.2, as you can sort of see there. And now I'm going to go into my project. So I'm just going to jump out of that a sec, and I'm just going to say code, if I can spell it, and then we're going to call it Nuxt 3 app. So this is going to open us up. So So there we go. So this is what it's installed, and if you've ever installed Nuxt 2 before, like this is pretty slim. Like there's nothing in here really. We've got our app. That is it. That's all we've got. So from here, I'm going to take it from the terminal in VS Code, and I'm just going to sort of prove to myself that it's working. So I've installed everything I need to install to get the basic app up and running, and then we just do yarn dev in the project. And it's going to come alive on port 301. It would be port 3000, but I think I might have something running, or I didn't close port 3000 earlier. But 301's fine. But it does actually we'll bear that in mind for when we set up Supabase and connect it. So there we go, we've got our Nuxt app set up. So this is the intro page that you get. This is basically the code within Nuxt Welcome. So what we can do is we can rip all this out, we can get rid. So what I normally do is I start putting my directories in at this point, and I would start to put in a pages directory, which is basically the pages that are going to form all your routes. If you're used to Vue, you have to write your own routes. If you add a page in here, so if we add an index.vue, we are going to get a route pre-built or automatically built. All we have to do, see it's kicking off because I haven't got template tags in here. But yeah, I basically favour running my application's route from the pages and the layouts directory. So what I mean by that is you can run it from app view. You could actually pick this up and you could run it from app view. But I'd get rid of it. I get rid of app. Don't bother with it. And the next thing I will do is I will jump into back into here, and I will add my layouts. These two are like a key for sort of getting going, and this will all become a little clearer when I've fleshed out, or when I get stuck into the Supabase part of it. And we've got plenty of time. So okay, so the docs are really good in this sense. Obviously, like I was saying before, the install. So there we go. Our route showing. You know that's as simple as that. We've got our home set up, right? But the docs actually give you some good clues, as in what you need to do with these folders. So the way the docs are set out is very much like how you would set up your project. So say for example we want to look at what the layout folders does. So the layout folder is really useful. So that's like the parent of child, if you like. So parent of pages. So you can create as many pages as you want. Imagine you've got like your index page, which is your home page. You've got your maybe about us page, your contact us page, your manage account page. Those pages routes all need creating within your pages. So you create pages for those things, and you can also create dynamic routes, which I might come on to in a bit. But you might want to wrap those things in different layouts. So you might want your account page to have a different layout than your home page, for example. And rather than sort of writing that code directly in pages, you can actually write those layouts and you can reference them in pages, so you can use them throughout multiple pages as your app grows. So it's really useful for that, having a layouts directory, because you don't have to have one. You can just run with a single page app if you want. You don't have to have a layouts directory. So in terms of that, I'm just going to bring up layouts because I can't find it immediately. There we go. So layouts, pages and layouts. So it starts talking about layouts and pages here. So it gives you the actual code here. So this is the code that if I'm going to be using layouts, this is the code that I need to be using in my layout. So it says here that I can put, obviously you can put wrappers and all sorts of stuff in there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one from another project, because I've got a project here that is more fleshed out, and I'm going to use it as a bit of a reference, and I'm going to talk you through it as well, because it will also speed some things up. So make sure you can see that. So I'm going to open this one, which is one I've started. And in terms of starting off, where I would always start is sort of getting the directory structure set up, and then I would embark on the next thing would be getting the application authorization working, because usually when you're building something out like this, like I'm talking from the perspective of not necessarily building a website where anyone can access it. I'm talking about building here an application where you've got to log in to get to it. So we've got to get all that authorization. I'd rather get it sorted, all the auth first, and get that out of the way, log in, create my own account so I'm able to develop on my own site, if you get me. So obviously I could start with no authorization whatsoever and I could just jump in, but for some reason I don't fancy it. I don't like doing that. I don't like leaving it till last. I like getting in there at the beginning, and I think it's a good way of, obviously you're structuring everything from that point, and it's the same journey you're taking as the developer, the same journey as what your customers or what your users are going to take, because the first point of call for the app, protocol for the app from a customer's or user's perspective is going to be the login. So if you get that out the way first, then you don't have to retrofit anything, because the user connects to your profiles table, your profiles connect to all the other tables on your site, and you want to add yourself some foreign key constraints as well. So you want to have all that working from the beginning. You don't want to have to do that at the end and deal with all those potential conflicts and what have you. So it's definitely the best place to start off with. So as you can see here, I've started off predominantly working on user account stuff. So I'm looking at the authorization, so with an auth.js, landing pages, and switching between a login and a landing page depending whether you're authenticated, sign up page, account page, and obviously I've thrown in a header as well, and also the folder structure. So right, we've got a layouts for a working layouts in here, and I've got a bit of Tailwind in here as well. And don't worry, I can throw these classes in now and then install Tailwind later. That's absolutely going to be no bother. So this template is the one I generally go for, because I like this layout as a start. So I'm going to copy this over to our project. I'm going to just close this for a second, and I'm going to paste this into our default layout directory. And into our defaults file, what I'm going to create, our default layout. So default view. And what is this doing? Well, it's looking for a component. Notice there's no import scripts as well. An absolute joy of Nuxt 3 is that you don't have to write import scripts. And it's looking for a file called the header, and then it's got a slot in there. And that slot is going to display automatically out the box whatever is in the index. So this was at the top, wasn't it, of our sort of tree a second ago, look. So there's no layout, there's nothing. It is the page. If I looked at the code, it is the page. And this, by adding a default in a default view in look, that's it. That's all what was in my file, look. That's all that's in there. By adding this, automatically Nuxt knows that this becomes the wrapper for index. So default becomes the wrapper for index. I've had a comment from Alex. What are the pros and cons and reasonings behind not using app view? You know me, Al. I don't have many reasons for doing things. I do things because I feel like it. And the pros and cons are, for me, one is I always forget it's there. And when I am debugging, I tend to have a fixation on the pages directory. And I think it's because I've got a lot of Nuxt 2 experience, and in that I didn't ever use an app view. I don't even think there was one. I think the core file was within pages, so it is a bias of mine. But I like the feeling as a LAMP stack veteran and a Magento and WordPress developer. I knew I'd tie it in. I like the feeling of seeing my directories and almost like when you're theming. Imagine you was theming a WordPress, and for some reason your homepage or your index page for your WordPress was located in the root of WordPress. Like, it'd throw you off, wouldn't it? And it'd continually throw me off. I like the fact that, for me, I see this in a different way. I'm sort of seeing the pages directory as part of an abstract of my theme. I see all this as my theme. Everything within the sort of folder structure, that's my theme. And then I like to know where all my stuff is. I don't like things hanging around in here. What I do with this part of the directory structure is I often fill it with, it's for config files for me. It's for, you know, Tailwind config and any other config files you end up using, and envs, and that's the root of my project rather than the root of my website, just in my reasoning. So that's why I go for it, because I'm comfortable with it, and I'm just taking a stab that the majority of sort of lamp stack vets will do the same. Will have the same mentality. Or I'm hoping they do. Or I might just be a bit of a weirdo. But thanks for the comment, mate. It was yeah, good question. Because you can do all this just using the app, the app view. So that slot is going to show pages and show things within them pages. But this ain't going to work because I ain't got a header. So I'm going to throw in here. Oh, this is wrong. This one will work. This one won't. So I'm going to throw in here. This gives me a good opportunity to add my components directory. And we all love a components directory because this is where the majority of the graph is going to take place. And in the components directory, yeah, it's going to kick off for a second because of my layout that I've not saved. And then within here, even though I'm only referencing the header, if I have a global folder in here, it's going to know that I'm talking about the header. So why am I using the header and not header? Because of WordPress, in a way. Because I like it reminds me and makes me comfortable. Well, that's all it is. So I've gone for the header, and in here I'm going to stick in my header, and I'm just going to throw in some code from another header to show you the extent of it and to keep us on track. Right, so the header here in this one is dead simple, and I'm going to throw this into our header here, and I'm just going to change that. Right, so that's saved, and now that's saved. So we've got our header. You can see there's definitely a header there now. Looking for links, it's still unstyled, and now, as you can see, pages has moved into its rightful place within the page, so it's now going to be dynamic. So from this point on, well, really, let's get Tailwind installed now, because you know Tailwind is going to sort of give us context around what we're going to do particularly in the context of what I've created here, and it's going to make things look more readable. So we'll throw in Tailwind, and it's a good step because it's dead easy in Nuxt, in Nuxt 3 as well. You don't have to mess about. So what do we need to install Tailwind? So I'm going to look at this other project, and I need a dev dependency of Tailwind, and that is about it, I think. Oh, and post CSS, I believe. So I'm just going to compare this with, yeah, I've got basically nothing going on in my package.json there, have I? I've got Nuxt, that's it. So I'm going to throw in these ones actually. So I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to throw it in. But these would be a yarn add, auto prefixer, post CSS, and Tailwind. In fact, that's how I'm going to do it. That's how I'm going to do it. That is such bad practice, Adam. Don't do that. No, everybody don't do that. Right, so I almost made a big mistake. Right, so I'm going to say yarn add Tailwind. Remind me of the namings. Tailwind CSS, yeah. Tailwind CSS. You don't need me to tell you what Tailwind CSS is. Everyone knows what it is. My personal opinion is it's fantastic. Other people are not so sure, but you can do what you want in your project. I'm just going to add it to this one. Auto prefix. And just to confirm, actually, let's just, and confirm for myself, because I don't always remember these things, but we'll do a Tailwind Nuxt 3 install. There we go. So, actually, it wasn't as complicated. Oh, there we go. So we've got Tailwind, post CSS, and auto prefix. So that's what we're going to throw in. Oh, and I've spelled that wrong, so hopefully I'll paste this in from here. I don't know why my I don't know what's been going on there. I'm going to have to type that again. It's been doing that recently. If anyone knows why, you're welcome, Alex. If anyone knows why, that'd be great, but it started playing up. Tailwind, sorry about this, peeps. Let's just get this in. Oh, I said peeps. Let's get this in. So Tailwind post CSS and auto prefixer. Why am I struggling with that word? It's a weird word to type. Right, so I'll throw in that into the project and you'll see it be added in a minute to my package.json. There we go. They're not dev dependencies, I know the dependencies, but I can alter that in a minute because I forgot the dev flag from when I was installing, but you can change it. You basically copy and paste them in there. But what I've got is all of those things installed. The next thing I need to do is add my Tailwind config file. So we'll say npx Tailwind CSS init, I believe. Yep, so it creates your config file, which lives in here, Tailwind config.js, and there's a specific sort of setup for Nuxt which you've kind of got to follow from this point. So this is our first sort of look actually at the Nuxt config file, which is one of the things that has changed since, or been restructured if you like, since Nuxt 2. So the majority of this was basically you didn't have this sort of directive in Nuxt 2, and it was dealt with you dealt with it quite differently, the Nuxt config file. So what we need to do is we need to add in these build script, the sort of build scripts or the build directives from a Nuxt config file. And I'm just going to show you the one that I've made earlier because it'll make more sense, and I'm going to talk about the differences. Excuse me. So this is a Nuxt config file that I've fleshed out a little bit. In terms of the differences between Nuxt 2 and this is basically the structure of the things that are in your app. So in Nuxt 2 we didn't have this sort of app object. Everything was in the main object, in the main export default. In this, in Nuxt 3, it's more broken down. So in order to get your CSS working for Supabase, it's telling you here, look, this is, I've followed Nuxt 2, haven't I? But hang on, where is it? Yeah, it's telling you in here, look. So Nuxt 2, there's the perfect example, look. So when installing Tailwind on Nuxt 2, it's basically saying just throw this into your export default inside the build section. In Nuxt 3, look, you haven't necessarily got the build section, so you need to just throw this into throw this straight in here, and that works. So this file is referencing the main CSS, which I'm just going to add. So this brings me on to nicely my assets folder. So the assets folder is created at the same level as all the others, and this will where you obviously keep your CSS and any other JavaScript and images, and we'll add a CSS folder and then a main CSS, and we're about right, halfway through, about right to be installing Supabase after this and getting all that working. So let's throw in the Tailwind gubbins, which is this. So this is all you need in your style sheet to get it all working. Save that. So make sure I've got everything. Oh, I didn't add the stuff I needed for this. So this content compilation. So this is basically what it likes, what Tailwind likes your Tailwind config to look like as a boilerplate for Nuxt 3. Okay, we're in. So now I should be able to at least break my site completely because I ain't got yarn dev running. There we go, we've got some styles. So we've got a nice background and we've got a bit of a layout. So Tailwind's in, we're there, we're going with Tailwind. So we'll leave Tailwind, we'll leave the Nuxt stuff there for a second. So, well actually it's only going to be for a second because now we're installing Supabase, so we're inevitably going to have to come back to Nuxt, so it's kind of a lie. But what we've got is a nice starting point for creating, as I said, in my opinion, the login flow. And during this process, the console log is going to be your friend because we're going to test things are working and connected with Supabase as we go through and just sort of sense check things as we go through. And the Vue tools at this point are not always useful because the Vue tools are the end result. Because what we're going to be doing is we want to be, I told you we'd talk about Pinia, we want to be passing user information to Pinia. And once we've got the user information into the app, that's when I'm comfortable passing it to Pinia. So let's have a real quick look at the auth process. I'll come back to that. Auth process of, or the way auth works in Nuxt. So we'll have a look at our backend application. I've got this open in Firefox. So our backend application for this has basically we've got a few databases set up. They're all pretty much blank, just with an ID and they're created at. And I've been testing it on another place today, so that's why I've got all these requests. So we're going to look at auth, and these are some test accounts that I've set up. So I know this is working from a Supabase perspective. When you first install your project, there really isn't much setup in terms of the authentication if you just want to be able to log into it with email. So we'll have a look at the providers, and by default email is always enabled. So this is how it is. I ain't done any further setup here. And if you want any others, you've got a right repertoire of third-party login systems here and login applications. So knock yourself out on those. I've used most of them in the past, and they're very convenient, very easy to set up using Supabase. Most of them just have like a a few sort of client details to put in. The Azure one's quite difficult, but that could be a live stream all in itself. So that's your providers. Supabase deals with all the emails for inviting users, confirming users, magic link, which is enabled again by default, which is absolutely, well, it's very useful, and the URL configuration. So this can catch you out. This would have caught me out because I've been doing other stuff today. My local host is now set up on 301. So if I'd have tried to get this working, I'd have been scratching my head thinking, why ain't it working? So for now, I'm just going to change it there, and I'm going to add a redirect URL for the same thing. So I'm covering off both, but majority of the time you're going to be spun up on 3000, but I'm just going to change that to show you that it's something to look for. And when you first set this up, obviously this collects a lot of user information, like all the login information, and it keeps hold of all that in a specific place in Supabase. But what you also want is a profiles table. The profiles table is is going to contain all your extra login information. So you can make it contain, because it's then easier to access, or you can access it from two places, your email. But by default, it wants to set you up a website, an avatar URL, a username. It gives you an updated app, which is useful. And then I've added other things in for this project. This is so easy to set up in Supabase. You have a SQL script as you're starting off called user management starter, and it is this. And you basically run it and it creates that table. Obviously I've already run it, but you can see what it's doing here. It's basically an instruction file from a SQL instruction file, and it's going to set up all of these fields basically. So if you want to make any modifications of this, or add any more rows, or add any more columns to your table, you can do it in here and you can run it if you're comfortable with Postgres, because it's Postgres SQL database. And once that's set up, you can actually then go in and you can administer a database through a nice little interface, and you can add more columns, you can insert rows, and as you can see, this is the same as my authentication data, as my user data, and that's because it creates a foreign key constraint with the ID of your auth users table, which isn't a table, but it is a function. It's a entity within Supabase. I'm just going to point something out at this point, remarkably, which is when you're looking at your statistics, like this looks like a lot of auth requests, and to me, I thought auth requests were just login requests. They're not, right? So an auth request is any time you go and authenticate your user object. So within auth requests, you've also got user requests. So the auth request is logging in. That's absolutely right. But there's no way I've logged into this application 500 times today. What I have done, every time I've refreshed my application, I've gone and got user data. And to show you something else in Supabase, you've got logs. And in these logs, you can check where the what's actually happening within your application, if you got any problems or anything like that. So as you can see here, this user endpoint within the auth API is getting hit a lot, but the auth endpoint is not getting hit a lot. All of these things are counted within Supabase as auth. So when you see this stacking up, you haven't got a leak anywhere and you haven't necessarily coded anything incorrectly. This is what it's for. This is its purpose, right? It needs to be able to deal with logging in and logging out and authenticating that. And I'm going to show you what it does with cookies when you authenticate in a bit. Okay, let's flip to the Nuxt app and get this installed. That was a bit of an overview because it's useful to understand the basic structure of what you're going to be connecting to as a backend. So we're going to connect to this existing project, which I've already connected to once, so I know it works. So within Nuxt 3, there's a great module, Nuxt Supabase. And it is sort of a pre-built, it has pre-built composables, Vue 3 composables that you can use to do basic connection mandates to Supabase. You don't have to build these things yourself. And there's it's basically creating the connection and then utilizing that created connection, which is using your authentication keys and your env to then go and get the various functions from the SDK, like fetching from databases, authentication, signing up new users. And there's a couple of really useful ones in here. So we'll go on getting started, and it basically takes you through it. So in terms of the setup, it is simple as, which is always the same simplicity. Every time I get caught out, don't I? So we'll say yarn add, I'll remember the dev flag this time, and then at Nuxt / I want that, it was at Nuxtjs Supabase. I think that's what it was. Yeah. So we'll run that and we'll get that installed. And then the setup is really simple from this point. So it encourages the use, or demands the use, of an env, which I would highly recommend. And in that env, you're going to be adding a Supabase key URL and a Supabase key. And luckily those already exist for me, and I'm just going to off screen add my env because I'm paranoid. I'm going to add the env for this project, and then I'm going to show you what it does. It will. I've probably already flashed it up on the screen, to be honest, but I'm going to add it in here nonetheless. And then I'm going to close it. Right, and I've added my env details, but in Supabase they're really easy to find. You just need to jump into your project settings. I believe. Where are they? Where are they? Authentication? No, project settings. Yeah, they're in there. You'll be able to find them in project settings. I'm not going to go to it. API, project settings and API, and the one you want is your anonymous, is your URL, and then your anonymous, your public key basically, and those are the things that you need to paste in into that env folder, env file, and then within your config of your Nuxt app, you want to be adding your keys and as variables and bringing them through. So how do you do that? Well, that's quite simple. I've got it already here. Just close this. In this app here. So I've got it set out all ready to go. So it's these ones here. So you've got an env, and then, but this sits outside of your app. There you go. So it sits outside. So if I was going to start adding like the app header and stuff like that, which I probably can do at this point just to give you context. So if I add the app header at this point, that would maybe go here, and then this is my header information, which is gonna basically, I'm gonna add font, awesome, brilliant, and also some fonts. So this is my app header, and then this is my env and all the things that happen outside of the app. So excuse me, structure this out how you want. Right, so we've got this all set up, and I might just need to refresh some stuff here. Yeah, I've got to start my server again. Back up on 301. What's it giving me that for? There we go. Right then, so I've got I'm up and running again. Right. So now we want to try and make some connection with Supabase, right? So and see if our credentials are right. If it's the first protocol. So for this, now this becomes useful later down the line, but I would create either a plugins folder and do this through a JavaScript plugin or a middleware folder. Now I usually would create a middleware folder, but you can move this around. So a middleware would be something that intercepts the connection before I deliver it to the application. So it's a good way of putting a root guard in there, you know, to stop people from getting to pages, so stop users from getting to pages that you need to be logged in for. And also, and then to redirect those people to the login page. Like it becomes quite useful, and you want to be doing that at a centralized location in your application. You don't want to be doing it on every page, for example, you know, every page, that's what I'm talking about there, or every component. So it protects your roots, and it's a good place to start making that initial connection, I believe, to your Nuxt app. And I normally create a file in here and I call it auth.js. It's also a good file for testing as well. So we'll call this auth.js. And in this file, we want to make a connection to, and I have got one that I made earlier. So this is the one I'm working on now. And the one I made earlier as an auth.js, all ready to go, but I'm going to talk through it piece by piece. Right then, so it's a good way to test, first of all, your connection with Supabase. So I'm first going to utilize a composable, which is define Nuxt root middleware. And this is going to give me sort of, as you can see, it's listening for a root change, and then when it finds that root change, it's going to do something. So basically I can make my connection to Supabase in here initially. So as I was talking about before, this part, the Nuxt module, actually I've got to include the Nuxt module. I haven't actually finished off the installation, have I? So I'm going to include the Nuxt Supabase module in my config here. So there, I needed a modules section. Yeah, I'm happy with that. We'll save that. So that's including it. But now I can start using the composables provided by this. And obviously you can follow this in your own time and get to grips with it. But I'm gonna give you a whistle stop tour. Don't like that error. Why am I getting that error? It might be due to my module that I've just put in there. Anyway, don't worry about that for the time being. So yeah, right, I ain't added the middle. Right, so I'm going to add. So basically, this middleware, you can set it up, and then you can use. So once you've got that set up, it's the best way to give you an idea of how that's it. So now I'm able to, in my pages, for example, so say for example I didn't want people to access the index page until they're logged in, and I have another logged in route. So what we'll do is we'll create a login page now to give us a different route. So in pages, we can simply come in here and we can create a login page .view, and then within this page, well, for now we'll just have a template div login, but we will add a component to that in the future. And then in my home page, I don't actually want anyone to access the root. So I'm referring to my middleware here. So basically the pattern of this, as you can see, is middleware, the folder name, auth, the file name, right? And then that will block, once it's fully set up, it'll listen for that middleware in this place in my app, and then it'll deal with all my login logic for me. So it's set up with really small, tiny amounts of code. So we'll just jump back into the auth.js. So now we'll start using some composables. So the first one we're probably going to start hitting is the auth client. So the auth client is one of the composables that the Nuxt plugin gives you, and all this is doing is taking your so I'll show you in a Nuxt 2 context actually. So if we look at something that I've done in Nuxt 2, this will give you an idea. So we'll have a look at Nuxt 2 app. So we'll just look at this one here. I believe this is in Nuxt 2. So the tradition, or the way I used to connect to Supabase was slightly different. It was more manual, if you like. It was through a plugin, and then I'd connect to Supabase, and I'd have my client there, and that basically that is doing the same thing, but it's getting, so the create client is what I was going to get to. Create client is now happening here, right? But this one is specifically creating the client for your login and your I'll show you here. I'll paste it in this. For your session creation, you've got another client that you can use for connecting to databases, which I'll move that all the way for a minute, which I'll show you in a sec. So within this, I can try catch, go in and get in a session, and then console log in that session. Right, I'm not going to get anything right in a minute because I ain't got anywhere to log in, which I'm just going to throw something in so I can log in. So within my login, I'm going to create a login component. So in here, in my components, I'm just going to bob in login component, and I like to capitalize these. So there's my login.view, and then within my login page, actually this will actually be a sign up page, won't it? Because I need to sign up first. But in my login page there, I'm referencing my login component, which lives here. What have I done there? Setup is not a function. Right, we'll have a look in a sec. Right, so there we go. So my auth client is going to be able to, I'm using that to be able to go to anything where you require auth, and if I just refer to the docs for Supabase, anything where we require auth, like signing in a new user, is using auth. So if we look at the docs here, if it'll let me scroll down, there we go once it's loaded. Yeah, anything where we're using auth, look, you see that? It's running a bit slow, it's jumping about, but anything where we're using auth, that's where we're using this auth client here. And then we've got another sort of composable from the plugin where we can go get anything else, and that's this one. So it's just a little bit different. Use Supabase client, and that's doing the one that I showed you in the Nuxt 2 app. So this is basically just creating the connection, passing it to something called client. You could call that Supabase if you wanted to. I like to call it Supabase because then I'm going, when I'm actually connecting to something, say for example my next call is to go to profiles, then instead of client I'm going to say Supabase. And the reason I would do that is because it then looks like the docs. So if I need to come in here and say, right, I need to sign in with email or whatever, well, that's a bad example because it's the auth one, but if I go to, say I want to fetch data from the database, there we go. It's the same, look, I can just copy and paste this stuff in because I've called it the same thing, if you get me, right? So that's going to go to the profiles database after we're logged in with the user value, with the value of the user ID. How do you get the value of the user ID? Well, we've got a composable for that as well, and it is simply that, and that is going to go, that basically runs the full query of going getting a user, which is this one here. No, get a user, where is it? Retrieve a, these are probably going to be hard to see on the screen if I just try and make them a bit bigger. Right, so sign, get a user, where's get a user? Have I gone mad? Not sign in a user, sign out user, retrieve a user, not get a user, retrieve a user. So that is basically running retrieve a user. It's shorthand for that. So I'm getting the user object straight away here. So that means I can pass the user value and the ID to this query because we said before they are linked by a foreign key, and it's going to be able to get me the profile for that user. So you know the code base is pretty lean and it makes quite a lot of sense, doesn't it? So we're just going to comment this out for a second, and then if there's no user found, look, redirect you to the login. So it detects whether we're logged in or logged out. Let's just save that for a second. So first thing we've got to do is actually create our user. So I'll tell you what, for consistency, I'm going to do a sign up page because I have got something I made earlier for that, so it'll speed this up a bit, and everything is in here. Right, so I'm just going to throw this in to my sign up page, and I'm going to walk through what this is doing. So I'm getting the client, look, and I should be able to sign up. So I'm getting it. I'm getting the actual sign up client here. If I go to my I've got an error. Why have I got an error? SAS dependency. So I've got some SAS in here, look. Just getting rid of the background of the input fields. And it's handy here because it's telling me that it ain't installed because I've just installed this project. So what we need to do is yarn add SAS. Get that installed. And then we'll yarn dev again. I haven't looked at YouTube for a bit. Nice one. And this will rebuild itself. There we go, we've got our sign up page. So for on sign up, we're looking for a full name, an email address, and then to confirm your passwords. And I've got a nice little password reveal thing. This is probably like your best practice type of sign up form because you're using an actual form, so you get all the nice validation of a form. Because obviously you could just do this with a button, but it's going away to Supabase, it's creating the user, and then it's coming back with and then redirecting them to the home page. Once it creates the user, it should redirect you to the home page, and then you need to log in because the way I've got it set up is two-factor auth. So you need to go away, come back, authenticate yourself, etc., etc. Usual stuff. But this is using the Supabase composable, the same as what I was referring to in here. So once we've got that set up, and I tell you what, I'm actually going to be able to log into this. So did I throw something into my login page? My login component? No, I didn't, not yet. So I'm just going to chuck something into my login page. So I just realised I have actually got an account, haven't I? Because I'm connecting to an existing account. So let's just chuck this into the login page. This is a pre-built one as well. So there's my login page. Right, okay. So this is going to go off and look for a user. So if I do this now, so my login page is very similar to my sign up page. Look, so this was my login page here, and I'm going to sign in with email. So I'm using the Supabase client here, and I'm going Supabase auth sign in with password, right? And that's going to get me, or it should get me logged in. So I'm going to log in with an account that I know exists. Right. Okay, that should have logged me in. Let's check. So even without anything allowing that to happen yet, we can check whether we're logged in. Application in this. Yeah. So it's added me. It looks like. I mean, this could have been from before. Has it logged me in? Doesn't look like it's logged me in actually. Might not have dealt with it properly. Right. Let's get the auth set up. So the auth here, we need to finish this off. So this is going to go to Supabase. Let's log some things out. I may have rushed through this actually and missed a step, but we're gonna the auth client. Yeah, okay. And we're gonna log the user. So this middleware should kick in. Named as, I don't know what that's done. Just have a quick look. Actually, this catches me out frequently. If you've got cookies left over from another project, you've got to get rid of them. Let's just check the sources again. Everything else is working. What was it? Application on it. Right, so that's clear now. And that's clear now. Yeah, it hasn't created me a session yet. Okay, it might be because I'm not using the auth client in the login page. I wonder. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to change that. So I'm going to use this, the auth client, to try and log in. Definitely in this app. Right, let's just close some of these. Starting to confuse me. Right, login, login, login. Right. So let's use the auth client rather than the normal client. See if that makes a difference. And if not, I'll check something else. I'm not getting any errors either. So I would use auth client, sign in with password. Any better? No, it's still not liking my structure of how I've done this. So tell you what we'll do. We'll get Pinia installed as well. Yeah, we'll install Pinia and we'll come back to the authentication because I want to save my user to Pinia anyway. Right, so to install Pinia, all we're going to do is, tell you what I might do. Yeah, we'll go through installing Pinia and then I'll open up a different project to show you the session and how and what it does. So I'll come back to that. It's never demand. Right, and so yeah, get rid of that one. Don't need that. Let's install Pinia. So I'm in my app at the minute and I'm going to show you what Pinia can do. So to install Pinia, we go yarn add Pinia. Okay, that's installed. So this gives us the power to be able to use state management within our application. And what better use of state management would than storing your user information, you know, your login information, your profile information. So you could do with a folder called stores. I believe it is in Pinia, not store, like it was in Vue.js. And then in there you can have an index.js as your sort of starting point. And then the syntax, obviously, it's really good. It's really simple. Sorry, I'll just bring it up in another one. So we'll just have a look at this. But yeah, stores. I've called it auth in that one. I'll change it just in case. So because it was auth information, and I called it. So this is how you set it up. So it's very familiar looking for a Vue developer that's used Vue.js before, but all you've got to do is you've got to define your store, and then you basically have this const. You call it what you need it to be called, use, and then the auth store. You give it an ID for retrieval. So this is what you'd use for passing information to it, and then this is the thing that you use to get information from it. And then you have your state, and then you just define your variables that you're going to be sending data to. So in this one, I mean, I don't need session to be honest, but I wanted to send user and profile information. So rather than struggle getting this working, I'm going to jump out of this one. So that's simply getting Pinia installed, and I'm just going to jump into this one. So I'm going to kill this port. Let's get this one spun up, see if it comes back. I think this was the last one I was using. See if it comes back on 3000. That's come back on 3001. That might have something to do with it, but we'll sort that out in a sec. So, right, let's get this running. What have I got running on localhost 3000? Yeah, I've got this running on localhost 3000. Why have I got that running? We've got sudo kill -9 auth to. And then let's try again. Yeah, oh, whatever. So we've got, if that actually auto reload, it might actually just be working on that. It's just, yeah, it's working. Looks like it's working. Right, I'll just change Supabase back to 3000 because we've got this working version here, which is going to be able to give me the ability to show you, to finish off, to show you what I need to show you. Right, so we just need to jump into URL configuration. Just change that back. Save it. Obviously, you'd add in your production URLs and everything that you need for your final project in here as well. We've got both going on there. Nice one. Right, but I'm already authenticated handily for this application, so we'll just open this a bit bigger, and yeah, we're up and running. So within this application that I started building here, as you can see, it's very similar. I sort of threw everything up just the same. I should be able to log into this one, fingers crossed. Yeah, there we go. So the login process worked. I must have missed something out of the other one because I was talking while I was doing it. And here's, yeah, that's the session object. So that was in, just referring back to my auth. So in this one here, this is sort of the finished article, if you like. So what I'm doing here is I'm importing my store, stores auth. I'm importing that for Pinia, and then I'm running my scripts client side, because in my, I don't know if you saw it earlier, but in my Nuxt config, I've got this as a client side single page application. So it's a static app. I'm not server side rendering, or I'm not intending to server side render this. It's all going to be statically rendered, so server side generated and then built static. But it's very similar to what we built up. So I've skipped forward like a couple of things and that's it. And then within that, I'm utilising all of the power of the Nuxt Supabase connector module, and I am going and getting the session. And then what is the session doing? Well, under the hood, it is adding these cookies, and it adds these cookies with the session information, and then it utilises these cookies to go back to Supabase local storage, and you can see in here, look, in local storage, it's got all of my login information, look, everything, and it uses this to make sure that I'm able to access certain features within Supabase, like if I'm authenticated for grabbing row level data and all that type of stuff, which I can show you quickly actually. But okay, so we're set up and running. All the cookies are adding in the right places. And first of all, in this one, I'm going and getting, in this file, I'm going and getting my session information, and then, as I mentioned before, I'm using my session information or my user ID to then go to the profiles table to pull my profile back. And now we use the power of Vue tools once we've got all that working. So within Vue tools, we can have a look at, just make this smaller because this looks unfamiliar to me. Click in here. Right, let's just refresh this. There, Pinia. So now we've got our Pinia, which is our state management. So you can see that I'm passing all my relevant information, and it's all reactive to the state. So in Vue, in Nuxt 3, how do you get this information? So this is one of the, I think we'll sort of, to be honest, right, we'll probably finish on this today, because I think we've got everything we need to be able to go make a connection to Supabase, and I've walked through all that. But now how do we display data from Supabase? So in Supabase here, so actually before we go on to that, I'll quickly go through these tables. So this profiles table, it has something really good, really sort of responsible, which is row level security. And even though all of these tables are public, and let's face it, we're behind a login, right? Only people, so this is really key for profiles, only people with the right URL, with an ID that matches the UID can view their record. Insert a record, the same. So these are locked down to individuals, so there's no way that another user could see another person's profile, which is like mega useful. But let's bear this in mind. When you're building an application, say for example a profile, an application with profiles in it, you might want an admin user to be able to edit those things. You might not. Profiles is maybe a bad idea. Profiles you could probably just leave and make those read only. But say for example you was to set up, and these are sort of arbitrary tables here, but a jobs table, which is a list of things that someone views on the front end, and you give it the same row level security. As an admin user, you're not going to be able to affect those jobs. And also, say for example you've got a number of users on your application that want to feed information into and pull information from those tables, you're not going to be able to do that either. You're going to get a row level security error on your front end. So you really need to think about balancing out the high security of individual row level security, like what I just showed you there, versus what's here, no active row level security policies. Now I would never do that. So what I would do as a sort of a good balance in between, particularly if your application is login based, so you have to be authenticated to even access it, is basically making it authenticated. So let's have a go at quickly setting one of these up for jobs. So how would I approach setting up something that I know is going to be shared, and I know is going to be shared editable as well? Maybe not shared inserted, because an admin, say a project manager, might set up a job and then the users might just access and amend that information. So we're going to set it up from this perspective. Right, so we're going to set it up from the perspective of anybody can sort of share it as long as they're authenticated. So I always go for full customization. And then I would write a message in here, and the first thing I'm going to set up is for this, which would be an update. So users can update, and this is normally like capitals, so it becomes obvious when you're looking at it in a list. Update this table. I'm going to select update. Right, now by default it's public, it's anonymous, right? I like to make sure that only authenticated users, so someone who's got that cookie in their browser and has been authenticated by Supabase, can access this information. So I would set both of these things to true. Now this may be absolutely wrong, but it's one of the things that I do, and I'm putting it out there as a method of keeping data secure enough that it's contained within authentication within your app, but loose enough that anybody in the app can edit any of the data within what they're allowed to within the app. Because you can also build in mechanisms within your actual JavaScript, within your actual application, to stop certain user levels and things like that from accessing certain data as well. But I say as a core, everyone needs to be authenticated at least for this type of application. Obviously, if you're building a website where it's public, you don't need any of that. You just want to show the information, like blog posts. You don't need row level security, you're just going to show it. So it depends on the information that's in there. So we're going to say that this is private enough that it needs to be authenticated to view it. And I would do the same thing again for inserting. And then did I click review there? Oh, didn't spell true correctly. What an idiot. True. And then it creates the scheme, it creates the directive, and it puts it all in there. So we've created a couple of row level, security things there. And then obviously, I'll tell you what, while we're here, let's create a select one. So this is reading information from, so these are predominantly what you're going to be using. So users can read. And we're going to set that up again, just to basically lock down the data to authenticated users, which I think is fair enough. right? And that's on the jobs table. So we'll probably won't get down to extracting information from the jobs table, but it just gives you an idea of a tip in terms of setup. Give it a good test out, but that's how I would do it. Next, we're going to try and just get some user information. And this is how you would do it in Nuxt 3. We are coming back to that. So Nuxt 3, we're going to get the information from Pinia, and we're going to display it on a page. And I've got something already sort of pre-composed here. So I've got my default middleware, and to get information, I'm going to my authentication store, which is here. So that's where I expect to find the information. And then in Vue 3, Nuxt 3, there is actually a setup directive. So you could do a script tag with the setup directory, right? I'm not taking that approach in this application, and this is again me being a Nuxt 2 dev in my head still, and I'm still not used to it fully. And the reason why I like this is because it's familiar. So setup now is basically the replacement for data, which I used to love that concept, and this is a very similar concept. So you know where you used to have data return, and then you set all your variables, and then you run with your app. The reason I use setup in this way is because I like to see it in this way, and then I'm returning my data from the store look as a user, and then I can output this. Let's just wrap it in white text. It might just come out. So I can wrap the user information here. Let's get the user ID. There we go. Quick as you like. Veet's amazing. I haven't even touched on Veet, but Veet, it almost appeared before I typed it. So that's getting my user ID from my user object, and I'm simply, obviously you can ignore this for a second, I'm simply returning the user from the store, and then I'm able to do things with it. And I'm getting it from use auth store. So in Pinia, use auth store, and that is it. Like, it's really simple to do. And to pass information into the store, so we'll just cover that off. I'm doing that in my middleware here. So you can see auth store user, which is the variable auth store user, which is again, I just jump back into my Pinia. So auth store without the use, user, that's where I'm able to get my information from, pass my information to, and sort of like commit it in Vuex language, commit it to the store, and then I'm able to get it from there. So let me just pull this back, and in here I've got a user object as well. So what I wanted to try and do is faff around with the differences between using a computed function in this way, which I like because it's structured in it, it's nicely structured data, but in Vue 3 it's very sort of okay to use this computed function. Now, computed functions are ways of changing your data, aren't they? There are ways of manipulating the information you're bringing in into different formats, and this is an example of creating a different type of user object. So I don't necessarily want to get everything from a user object, I just want to get a few things. I've created a computed function here. I'll come to that one in a sec. And we can put this onto the page. There's my user object, just with those things, right? And now, how does that affect your Vue tools? Because those of you that are familiar with it, this is one of the things about that I don't like, is the Vue tools seem a lot more convolute for Nuxt 3. But I'm getting my user object as part of my setup, not as part of like a computed function. My Pinia information is there like natively, I don't have to switch, which is very handy. And yeah, basically this is where the magic's going on. This is where I'm going to work, innit? So we had this massive object that was coming through, and then I used the computed function to filter it down into these objects, and I did that very simply in here. But say for example I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to do it in a more traditional way. Traditional, the language I use. I can put this to get the email, and I'm getting the email from a computed function in a more traditional way. And then if I want to look at that, if I want to target that, what have I targeted there? The landing page, yeah, it's back. Where's all my stuff? It's in index, isn't it? So now I've got a computed function in the place where I feel like it needs to be. So it's one of those things between traditionalism versus progressivism. If you're straight in on Vue 3, you're going to be saying, Adam, what you're pissing about with computed functions down here, you're just bloating your code. And I would be saying, but I like to see it in this format because that's the way I've always seen it, and things were better in the old days. Yeah, so that's a, God, I don't know what you call that. It's not a crash course, is it? It's not. It is a ramble. It was a live ramble of this is how you get set up, really. And I'll probably leave it there. What I might do is, I don't know, but I felt as if I structured that in. I probably was like a wasp in a Coke can, to be honest, when I watch it back. But I might chop this up into other videos that are easier reference or referable, that you can refer to easier, to be able to like split it up into different portions. What is the significance? So yeah, so cheers Al with another little comment, love it. What is the significance of the question mark before the email variable? So here, so this is checking, this is a shorthand way of doing something like checking the user exists before you go to get an email. So in the longhand it'd be this user, and then I check this user, and you could actually do this. You could say, if this user exists, then get this user.email. And what it does is, within these applications, as they grow, sometimes what happens is you get a problem where the array can't build quick enough that it can't find the object within that, or the variable within that object. So you'd get an error saying like this is undefined. Like email is, we've seen it, you see it sometimes where you get like a variable within it. Like imagine you've got a user variable in here and it says email is not defined, or name is not defined, or ID is not defined. It's because it hasn't been able to get this object. So what this does, it checks for user first and then it checks for the email, just like this would. So then I'd be able to return confidently this user email. So that's basically that in shorthand. So it's just a little trick there. But thanks for asking that question, because my expertise would have gone unnoticed. So appreciate that. Thanks for staying to the end as well, because this is the end. It was meant to be an hour and I've dragged on for longer. But thanks for watching, everyone. Obviously any questions you can whack them in the comments. This will be up on the channel, and a like and a subscribe doesn't go amiss if you like this type of content. I absolutely love Nuxt and Supabase as a coupling and as a solution. I hate saying full stack because they need to change that, as a Jamstack solution. And yeah, I hope this has been useful and insightful, and I'll no doubt I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ra.